Sun Tzu once said, "It is more important to outthink your enemy than to outfight him." Keep this in mind. As we discussed today, South Africa's media is reporting recently that the country is considering moving its 15th summit to China, and how that's going to impact now the role of the International Criminal Court moving forward. My name is David Waralu.
And my name is Elizabeth Ann Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
And our show today is sponsored by BioTrust Collagen.
An ICC warrant means South Africa would be obligated to arrest him if he arrives in the country.
There's still no clear answer to the question, will South Africa give up the BRICS Summit to China to avoid the embarrassment of having to arrest President Putin?
And we are here to communicate a very clear message that we would like this war to be ended.
All right, what is going on with this topic that just emerged about 3 days ago?
Yeah.
When the South African government mentioned the possibility of moving the BRICS Summit.
I think maybe the biggest thing about this,
Yeah.
David, is the fact that instead of just saying Putin can't come, they said, well, maybe we'll just move it so that he can come. Now, there is a lot of question as to the validity of the ICC, really, because the US doesn't even really participate in the ICC.
I know. And what's interesting also that is just 2 days ago, the Netherlands and Canada issued a memorandum, not a memorandum, like a lawsuit of sort against Syria in the ICC.
Yeah.
And why? For human rights violations. Well, hold on a second. What did the Dutch government do to farmers?
Yeah.
And what did Canada did to demonstrators in Ottawa?
Yeah.
They violated their rights.
Right.
And some of those rights were almost classified under international law.
Yeah.
So you can just see the hypocrisy. And
Hugely so.
I just wanted to bring this up. I know we're not talking about Canada and the Dutch,
Right.
but just to show the double standard of these international forums that there is one set of laws to one country and a different set of laws for them.
Right.
And that just doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
and like I said, interestingly enough, the United States is not really part of the ICC.
Yeah.
And the reason that is suspected that that is the case is because the amount that would be in there in terms of how the U.S. has conducted itself in Afghanistan and Iraq and across the world.
Well, that is correct. I mean, we
would
won't
have-
shy away from it. I was in
Right.
Afghanistan. There were some atrocities committed. Luckily, it was not in my unit where I was. I heard of some. Same thing with the Brits. They
Yeah.
committed atrocities in Afghanistan. Australia committed atrocities in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It was one, I don't know if you want me to share one horrible story, but
I think it would be
you know,
important for you
it's
to share
kind of, yes, enemy or not. Human beings, yes, those are considered enemies and so forth. But when
Right.
you have a soldier, pissing on a dead body,
Yeah.
that's kind of degrading,
Ugh,
and
yeah.
that's how, the behavior of the Aussies,
Right.
Australian military,
Yeah.
not all of them, just the special ops.
Right.
Same thing with the UK.
Right.
And some of us in the special ops did some very horrible things that they don't support. The reason why I'm saying this is because in a war, there are certain regulations, rules, and all that stuff.
Right.
So that just, you're going to have to respect that. So
Right.
this is where I see the hypocrisy of Canada and the Dutch in presenting this. But again, we're not talking about all this. So
Yeah. Before trying anti-aging serums or wrinkle creams, check if you're getting enough collagen first. Collagen is a protein that plays a crucial role in maintaining the health and elasticity of our skin. Without it, we may notice visible signs of aging like fine lines and wrinkles. While collagen production naturally declines as we age, certain collagen supplements can help bring back a youthful glow like you wouldn't believe. This is why I highly recommend taking collagen. Collagen is specially formulated to enhance skin elasticity and hydration. It's made with the top 5 most powerful types of collagen that are essential for skin health, elasticity, and firmness. With 10 grams of bioactive collagen peptides per serving, collagen is designed to make it easy to boost your collagen levels to support healthier skin. Try it today to receive 53% off, free shipping, free VIP live health and fitness coaching for life, a free new e-report titled The 14 Foods for Amazing Skin, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Plus, you'll help feed hungry children, families, and communities in need to live healthier lives with your order through BioTrust partnership with NoKidsHungry.org. Order today by going to healthwithgeo.com or by clicking the link in the description down below.
We'll keep our focus on this upcoming, the 15th BRICS Summit that's going to be held in Durban in late August this year in South Africa.
Or somewhere else.
Or somewhere else.
I think the biggest thing, like we were talking about earlier, is the fact that the BRICS Summit, basically South Africa, you know, South Africa and the BRICS nations basically said, we're going to side with Putin. So at no point did they say, we're just not going to let him come. And I know that they're facing a lot of backlash right now from the United States and from NATO to say, oh, he just can't come. You know, you have to arrest him if he shows up. The problem is that his allegiance, the BRICS countries' allegiance, are to Russia.
Not to the U.S.
And not to the U.S.
That is correct. And by the way, just for you to know the background story of the ICC, it was in March 17th when the ICC, International Criminal Court, issued the arrest warrant for charges of war crimes. I mean, come on. We all know the double standards in the international forum. Not all of them, but some. And this one is one of the examples. So, and this is now the conversation inside the South African government is to move it to non-signatory members that exist from within. You're looking at China, India, and Brazil. And most likely, India and China.
Okay.
Those are the only two non-signatories to the ICC treaty. Because in this case, South Africa is bound by the treaty clauses to arrest. But if they do that, that could become a war between South Africa and Russia. And I don't foresee that happening anyway, because there's a good relationship between South Africa and Russia. And they won't do that. South Africa.
So, it would start something very serious if
what the West wants. That's why it was a smart move to put now the consideration. Remember, it is under consideration that they're going to move it to China to be hosting the summit over there.
Well, so this is a very interesting turn of events because we're watching these things play out sort of in real time, right? So the United States, one of the things that we bring up very often, because it's very possible that this is the reason that the whole situation with China and Taiwan and the whole situation with Russia and Ukraine is happening at all, and that is the power plays, right? So the power plays between the BRICS countries, so Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa, right? So in between the BRICS countries and basically the Western world. So basically the US, NATO, Australia, Japan, the whole Western cluster, right? So we're seeing the change in power happening here. So I wonder if this in its own way was a play to destabilize that relationship, to destabilize sort of the relationship between the BRICS countries. Because if they were to arrest Vladimir Putin, I think that would cause massive uproar and massive chaos in the BRICS countries.
It'll change the dynamics, but also there is another alternative to that also, or another aspect to look at it. Is that could be that the West wants to slow down the demand from countries to join BRICS. There is a long list out there. I mean, even France, a hard Western country, expressing now interest in wanting to join BRICS. And remember, I didn't say France is joining. I said France is expressing its interest. Now, France could be playing another game altogether.
Absolutely.
For example, they could be thinking in terms of, well, let's just test the water to see what reaction we're going to get from the West, from the US mainly, but also how the BRICS members going to look at that, whether they're going to look at it favorably or not. Because what I can say for certain, and I feel comfortable saying this, what I can say for certain is that if France ends up joining BRICS, which by the way, it's process. You can't just join BRICS overnight. It's process.
Absolutely.
But if that will be a seismic change
Yeah.
to not only the US-Euro relations, but also the dynamics of the global order.
Yeah.
That's why. Well, mind you, that France has been calling for Europe to kind of reduce its dependency on the US dollar.
US dollar, yeah.
And what is BRICS is working on?
Their own currency.
Exactly.
And their own currency that is backed by gold, by precious minerals, precious metals, minerals, and land.
Yeah.
So it's actually backed by
Yeah.
something tangible, which is an issue with the US dollar at all. So every fiat currency, which is what happened to the US dollar when it came off of the gold standard, which means it's no longer tied to gold. The only value it has is basically the credibility of the government. The problem with that is when your government becomes uncredible, or for example, what we're watching with the debt issue here in the United States, the fact that we don't manufacture anything anymore. So, we have a really big, and that we've weaponized the dollar with sanctions. So now that we're watching that happen, we are watching the BRICS countries try to de-dollarize the world.
Yeah, this is not about just bilateral trades or just among them. We're talking about global.
Right.
Interesting enough is that the French president, Emmanuel Macron, said the same about the de-dollarization of the euro. Not the de-dollarization, but rather the statement when he said that Europe should reduce its reliance on the dollar for global trade. He didn't say for the Eurozone trade, for the global trade. Because France is losing on a lot of good deals, economic one, because, for example, the one I'm very familiar with was after the Iran, the P5+1 agreement with Iran regarding the nuclear program, the GCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And right after that agreement was reached, a lot of French companies reached out to Iran.
Yeah.
A lot. You're looking at billions of dollars.
Yeah.
I remember, because I did an interview, in New York, and I talked about this. They said, well, what do you mean, Dr. O? And I said, well, France does not want to stay behind, so they're jumping on it. But when we withdrew from the JCPOA unilaterally, breaking all the norms of international agreements, because that's what we did.
Right.
So France ended up holding the end of the stick because they couldn't do business, otherwise there'll be sanctions by the US.
Yeah.
That is the reason why I believe Macron said that statement. And he didn't say it in vacuum.
Absolutely. Yeah, speak more to that, because it didn't happen in a vacuum.
No, it's because the idea of now we, the European, in this case France, we only have to follow the United States, and the US only dictating the terms that favors the US. You look at the Ukraine conflict.
Yeah.
Well, who's favor or who's benefiting from the Ukraine-Russia conflict? Is Europe?
Yeah. No.
No.
It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
Well, quite frankly, I think it's probably BlackRock.
But it's the US.
Right.
That's the bottom line to it. Because now you look at even Germany's economies, conditions where they are, when you have a second consecutive quarter that with the economy contracting, that will not bode well for the rest of the year. As a matter of fact, their main bank, Bundesbank, which is the main banks beside the Dutch bank, this one deals also with economic data. I mentioned that the rest of 2023 is going to be that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you have now industries in Germany that are shutting down because they can afford the energy bills.
And what's happening in Germany is very strange to me, especially with what they're doing with their nuclear power plants and shutting them down and relying on coal again. It's a very interesting, something is happening, right?
Yeah.
They know something we don't know. I don't know why they're shutting them down. I don't know why that's happening, but they clearly know something we don't know. There's clearly some strategy there. What that strategy is, I don't know. Is it a benefit to the people overall? I don't know that either. But there's clearly something going on there behind the scenes. They know that this situation is changing.
Yeah, but the idea of if you are in charge of a government, in the case of Olaf Scholz, the chancellor, how can you embark on failed policies, economics that end up hurting the average citizen?
Well,
German, that is.
because there seems to be a global game going on, right?
Yeah.
So there's this illusion that what we care about is the people, right? There's this illusion that what all world governments care about is their people. That's an illusion.
Yeah.
What people in power, unfortunately, for the most part, tend to care about is their own interests.
That is true.
And I believe, unfortunately, that it's very naive to think otherwise. That it's very naive to think that anyone's or most anyone's government is actually there to take care of the people. And I can tell you that that's the case based on looking at how life is for the average person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. When I was overseas and I had a stop in Frankfurt, and I was asking some Germans, and I even asked Germans that I met in Africa. I went to North Africa. And those Germans, they were staying in the same hotel I was.
Yeah.
And I asked them, and they're like fed up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they are so perplexed.
Right.
They told me, like, we don't understand how a government can embark on policies like that end up harming us. So there are Germans that are aware of this. This isn't going nowhere.
Yeah.
But there are also the other side of, or other segment of society that is being fed that notion of, oh, you gotta support Ukraine, and they bought into that.
Right.
Same for us here in the US.
Absolutely.
Same in UK, same in France.
Yeah.
And this is what prompted me to say about the French president's statement. Could he be realizing that the economic downturn in France could backfire on him, and he might end up experiencing the same fate of Louis XIV, for that matter. So I'm sure you all know.
The French take that stuff very seriously.
They do. I mean, you look no further than the French Revolution.
Yeah. Oh,
you know, and how it happened. And was any other country in Europe that took the same initiative? No.
Nope.
It was only France.
Only France.
So, and this is where I see those dynamics as to why the US was pressuring South Africa and South Africa pushing back to a degree, except that South Africa is bound by its commitment to this treaty.
Right.
That's why you signed up.
Right.
But this, to me, personally, what just happened in South Africa, because now China, you have China's going to step in by saying that they're stepping in to offer assistance to South Africa.
Yeah.
What this is going to do to some other countries now, they're going to reconsider.
Yeah.
Because after all, even the United States is not a member of the ICC, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So, if we are the one to uphold the international order, how come we are not even in one of those?
Right. And I don't know, even when that came out, even when that arrest warrant came out, I mean, basically just about everybody called it out, right? Called it out as, you know, this organization doesn't, unfortunately, I mean, I actually think that real war crimes, I think they should be prosecuted. I think people really should be held responsible.
And it doesn't matter who.
It doesn't matter who
you are.
Actually should be responsible for those things.
That's true.
But unfortunately, that's not how
the
that
case.
works.
That's true.
I deeply wish that it was. But I want to go back to something that you said earlier that I think is actually very important to pay attention to. Because you're right, a lot of people have been fed that narrative of, you know, support Ukraine. Because obviously support the people of Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are displaced, they're suffering. A lot of them have died. Are injured. It just came out. Moscow released this number, so whether it's true or not, I don't know for sure, but it seems fairly reasonable. That 7,500 Ukrainian soldiers, basically, over the last 10 days have either been killed or injured in the conflict zones.
And by the way, those might not even be Ukrainians.
Right.
I was there.
Right.
I saw with my own eyes. I was on Ukraine ground.
Yeah.
And I saw the lineup of the new recruits. They didn't look Ukrainians to me. And I'm very familiar with Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time there back when I was working in Washington. And those recruits were escorted by U.S. military.
Right.
So that tells me right there, those weren't Ukrainians to begin with. they didn't look like from South America.
Right.
What they look to me is from another Eastern European countries.
That's very interesting. I wonder where they were from.
So that's, I don't know. I can't speculate here because I don't know where they're from. But all I could tell was there's some clear distinctions how you can differentiate a Polish person from a Romanian, from a Bulgarian, from a Ukrainian. So, and as I said, I spent a lot of time over the years, so I kind of learned what to look for. So
and if they're being escorted into the country, they're
by the U.S.
By the U.S., they're probably not from the country.
Exactly,
right? It's likely that they're not from there if they're being escorted into the country.
And this is where this idea of what the European are buying into, because I put this within the context of the French president's statements, and it tells me that he is seeing something that most other European leaders are not.
That's the thing,
or choose not to see. Because if you think about the Chancellor Olaf Scholz, well, he's so weak politically, France at least still can push a little bit against the
Macron is not up for re-election.
No.
And that's, I think, maybe the biggest thing in this situation, because he isn't up for re-election.
That is a good point.
And when presidents of countries, when leaders are up for re-election,
they do.
They'll say and
whatever.
do whatever they feel public opinion will dictate. Right now, I don't know what his game is because he's not up for re-election. So I don't know what his game is right now. But it is important to note that he is not up for re-election. And so his priority is not more or less to lie to the people because he's not looking to get elected again.
Yeah, that will be different than the Boris Johnson, who just retired from parliament because it turns out that he lied to the government about the parties he was there. But also because Bojo has another job in mind. You know what it is?
What?
He wants to become the next NATO Secretary General.
So that's what I'm saying is what is the next play there, right?
That's why UK is pushing this whole narrative. So it's very interesting dynamics too. Just to tie it back to our China offering assistance to South Africa, China even said that they will, and I looked at they will help bolster security for BRICS Summit.
Yeah.
So, and I know that,
Oh yeah. So here, do you want me to read the whole quote? So
please,
here's the full quote. So China is quoted saying this. China's top police officer has promised South Africa that Beijing will help bolster security for the BRICS Summit in August amid controversy over Russian President Vladimir Putin's possible attendance while an international warrant is out for his arrest. During a meeting with South African Police Minister Becky Cele, I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly, in Beijing on Thursday, Public Security Minister Wang Xiaohong, I said I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly, said China was willing to work with South Africa to strengthen the security of the BRICS Summit to be held in Johannesburg on August 22nd through 24th. So that is very, very interesting.
Yeah, well, because also this dynamic shows how closely they work together.
Right.
Because if a country within the economic blocks will step in to assist, that tells me, believe it or not, I've always believed that BRICS, if they get their act together, they will be a major economic bloc in the world. And what do I mean by this? There is one issue that could hinder the progress of BRICS. And that issue is between India and China regarding the border. If they don't fix that, that's going to be like a mark on their ability to really present that credibility of unity and strength of economy and so forth. Till that issue, if that issue is not resolved, there will always be that big question mark about, okay, can BRICS really live up to its potentials? But at least a gesture like this by China, it shows where they want to move BRICS forward. In addition, you got a whole list of countries wants to join BRICS.
Right. And so I think it's so interesting that you're bringing that up because here in the case of Russia, you don't just have Beijing saying,
Yeah.
we want to help strengthen security. So there's a lot to unpack here. But it's the South African police minister said that China was willing to work with them to strengthen security. So right now we have China and South Africa basically saying, we're going to protect Putin. Even if he does come here, we're going to try and protect him.
Yeah.
Number one, protect him from who? So that's an interesting question too, is who is it that's actually, is it the ICC that's going to come get, who is going to try and come get him? But now we have China and South Africa saying that if they do try, that they're actually going to come and protect
the Russian president.
The Russian president.
What's interesting about these dynamics is that there is a precedent. And I recall this with none other than Omar Bashir of Sudan. There is a precedent that a president who is under indictment from the ICC can be granted a waiver.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
It's because, you know, this one was example for Omar al-Bashir was granted temporary immunity when he visited South Africa in 2015.
Interesting that it's the same
South
place.
Yes. So what I found very interesting about this precedent, why aren't they granting Putin the same?
I think because right now we have a very public ongoing conflict.
Yes.
And so if they want Putin, that, you know, that's why, right?
Yeah.
They want him to be arrested. They want him to be the global villain. Whether he is or not is, you know, certainly
basically we've been looking for a war with Russia.
Right.
Since the disintegration of the Soviet Union. Actually, the aim has always, and I wrote a book about Russia, so I kind of did the research with backing it up with reference, with evidence that we went back on our words to the Soviet Union at that time, by none other than James Baker, the former Secretary of State, who said in the St. Catherine Hall, when he said, and I will utter the words exactly as he said them, that mark my word, we will not move an inch eastward. And what did we end up doing?
I think moved it twice.
Yeah. Actually, 3 times.
3 times, that's right, 3 times.
So this is why NATO moved from 19 to 30 members, now 31 with Finland. You know, it's kind of, we've been on this for so long, aiming at this because what we wanted is we wanted to break up the Soviet Union completely.
Yeah.
That's what we want. Why? Because Russia or Soviet Union has a lot of resources.
A lot of resources, oil resources, mineral resources. Yeah. That's a very, very good point.
It's all about that. That is the reason why. And Putin represents that obstacle.
Yeah.
That obstacle because he is very shrewd.
Yeah.
Diplomat. He is very geopolitically, he's very calculating. He knows he's a former KGB. You know, you don't make it to colonel in KGB if you don't acquire certain really, really an in-depth understanding of the dynamics of global order.
Yeah.
And he's good at it. So, but that's not the point. The point is, we in the West, collective West, not just the US, collective West, we feel that he is the last obstacle. When I wrote the book, the Russia book, the Dynamics of Russia's Geopolitics, I asked the question in the book for the readers to just contemplate. Who will replace Putin?
That's a good question.
I presented 3 scenarios with 3 individuals currently.
Yeah.
But all 3 do not fit Putin's shoes. Not only in charisma, not only in shrewdness, but not only in understanding the global geopolitics.
Yeah.
You know. The 2 main ones were Sergei Lavrov, the current foreign minister, and the other one is Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. They are not equipped with the same charisma and personality of Putin. So that is the question that...
He really, I mean, and he does. I like or dislike the guy.
Yeah.
There's some realities to pay attention to here.
Yeah, except that the fact that we are now surprised at the outcome of these sanctions, that the sanctions have not worked as we anticipated, because now Russia is making more money than it did prior to the conflict. You know, that's why I am comfortable saying that the creation of this conflict is going to end up the cause of our downfall.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
And the thing is, as this conflict has dragged
Yeah.
on, that actually does seem to be what's happening, right? So at the very beginning of the conflict, we were, everybody was like really gung-ho, that's great, whatever.
Yeah.
Over the course of the conflict, that's when the mass push for de-dollarization has happened. Because that's happened over the last few months. Over the last few months, it has not and it's not just been Russia that's been calling for it, right?
No.
China, Saudi Arabia,
The whole global south.
whole global south has been pushing for it, and it's been coordinated.
Even Iraq.
Even Iraq.
Iraq, that we sort of put in so much blood and treasure in it.
Right.
They end up ditching the dollar and
Yeah.
moving to Chinese yuan.
Well, and so that's the thing, right? So I think you're absolutely right. Instead of focusing on the next conflict or the next war, I wonder if because there's a saying that war is money, which I think is horrible.
It is horrible, but it's the truth.
And
It's
that's
reality.
it's one of the things that if you're in an economic downturn, start a war.
Create a war. Yeah.
Because war creates
money.
wealth.
Yes,
it makes
that's right.
money.
It's
Unfortunately, yeah. I think that's out of all places, that's the thing where profit should absolutely not be. There are other places I think profit should not be, but that is one of them.
That's one of them,
because that incentivizes suffering. But we are looking at basically since the conflict started, and this has been in the works for a while, so it's not just like this happened overnight. But it feels like to me, and this is just my opinion, that there was an opening. And they saw their chance. BRICS, the global south, saw its chance.
Yeah. It's now or never.
It's now, yeah.
Now or never. Yeah, like I always say, because the new geopolitical order
Yeah.
is going to be based on economic blocks, not ideology.
Yeah.
That is my
Well, and honestly, I sort of wonder if ideology was ever real in terms of, the U.S. expansion.
Well, it's no different than an enemy, whether it was perceived or real.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Is it really ideology? Did we really want to
Nah.
spread democracy, right?
No.
Or was it economic interests that were really running the show the entire
Yeah.
time?
They were masked as democracy.
Right.
Now, the second question we need to ask is, not the question, but rather to see the dynamics. Why, for example, China that stepped in, but not India? Why do you think that is?
Right, that's interesting.
Well, the reason is because both South Africa and China did not condemn Russia regarding the Ukraine war.
yeah.
So it will make more sense for China, not India, because India can be pressured by the US.
Right.
China cannot be pressured by the US.
Right.
So that's why you're hearing now in the West, we stopped using the term decoupling from China.
Right.
Rather than saying de-risking.
De-risking.
So
right.
there is a reason for all that. So this is where I see those dynamics as to why China steps in, but also China doesn't do it because they wanted to do it. China's doing it also because that's another way of flaunting it or flexing its global muscles
Absolutely.
and showing now China can step in.
Yeah.
There is a reason for that also, because in international relations, context matters.
Absolutely.
The fact that China stepped in now to take an entire summit shows a lot.
Yeah, it does.
That's how I see it.
And it's interesting because it does appear that China is trying to build trust on the global stage.
Yeah.
And as China is trying to build trust, one of the things that makes you trustworthy is to defend your allies. And so that is something that we are watching happen, is China and South Africa, quite frankly, are trying to defend their ally. Now, do I think Putin is a nice guy? I do not. I think that he's probably done some pretty terrible things.
Like other leaders.
Like other leaders,
Yes.
right? It's not just him. Other leaders have done it. It doesn't make it okay.
That's
but
true.
it is sort of the norm in terms of leadership, quite frankly. Unfortunately, it seems to be the norm. But the issue is that if you want to build trust, you stand up for your allies. And the United States, a lot of stuff has been leaked. I don't know if it's leaked or not.
Yeah.
You know, the United States is spying on Zelensky, right? Has
On
spied
Germany,
on
France, on
spying
allies,
on all the allies. I'm not saying that China's not doing the same thing. They may very well be, but at least publicly, you know, France and the U.S. are allies, right? Well, what happened with the submarine deal with Australia?
Yeah, we stabbed them in the back.
The United States is not standing by its allies. And you know, the reality is, who would you choose?
Yeah.
Whether, you know, you and I have a little bit differing opinions on what China's motivation might be, but I can tell you that it looks a lot better to stand by your ally than to stab them in the back.
That's true. That is true, because that will give you credibility.
Right.
Which is something we lack.
Right. And it's something, if you want to build a strong ally base,
Yeah.
if you want to bring people together to support you, you support them first.
Yeah.
And so for me, that is the most important and like actually a fairly critically important piece of this, because, you know, the ICC and, you know, all of that stuff, I actually don't think that's the most important part of this. I think the most important part is the stand that China and South Africa are taking for Russia, and it's worth paying attention to.
Yeah. Well, that's a good note to end this recording on. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, let us know what you think. Leave us some comments there. And I will be happy to read what you have to say, because I always read the comments. I like reading them, and I like to learn. I learn from the comments of our viewers. So literally, I've always find them very interesting. So,
but they're almost always very intelligent.
Yeah.
They're
well,
very well written.
We're gonna have people we disagree with. That's fine, as long as it's done respectfully.
Respectfully,
I have no problem with somebody saying, "Hey, I disagree with you."
Right.
As a matter of fact, disagreement is a good sign of
you and I disagree on a couple of things.
It's only when it becomes disrespectful and all that, then I personally have no tolerance for that.
Right.
So that's just how I operate. So, well, we hope you guys, and by the way, guys, if you like the content of this video here, hit that like button. We truly appreciate it. And subscribe if you have not done so. We look forward to seeing you next time. As always, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.